First of all, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on something that I mentioned earlier this morning. I said there was going to be a major development in the story that we brought to you back in 2020, and that was the horrific story of Michelle and Liam. Not their real names, but Michelle and Liam were subject to horrific family violence at the hands of a serving police officer. We have never named the police officer, and we're not doing so today. But Michelle made complaints to all the integrity bodies in relation to this and really wanted it to be taken seriously. And now the Victorian Inspectorate has taken a look at this matter and at how the complaints were managed. The Victorian Inspectorate oversee Victoria's integrity agencies, including IBAC. This report, and they're not using her real name either. This report is called IBAC's Referral and Oversight of Emma's Complaints about Victoria Police's Response to Family Violence by a Police Officer. That's a long title, but it's an important one. It tells you everything you need to know. That's what they're looking at, and they have very seriously found IBAC wanting. Michelle is back with you this morning. Michelle, it's good to talk to you this morning on a day where we seem to be getting a little more transparency and a little more clarity about how the agencies have handled your matter. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Virginia. Yeah, it's been an absolutely excruciating process as IBAC has pretty much put everything out trying to stop this report coming out, but I'm really grateful that the truth is out. And that the Victorian Inspectorate has been as rigorous as it has. And, you know, I understand they had to give IBAC procedural fairness. It's been excruciating for me, but I'm glad that it's out and I hope it drives real change. And I really hope that on the back of this report, the Andrews government or the coalition, whoever wins the election, and it would be good if both of them would commit to having an independent police ombudsman to properly look at complaints like mine and give proper police oversight, because IBAC's just failing in its duties, and this report lays that really bare. And the horrific human consequences for me and for my children. We suffered a lot of violence. Officers weren't held to account because of IBAC's failings and Victoria Police's failings. And when I drew Victoria Police's failings to IBAC's attention, IBAC didn't act.
Well, that's what's being found, and you've probably had much more time than me to have a look at the report. I've just, very quickly glimpsed it at a summary of it during the news headline break there. But let me just read a little bit of it. It's the Victorian Inspectorate's view that if IBAC's process had required a careful written examination of the relevant issues relating to whether it was more appropriate for Victoria Police rather than IBAC to investigate the complaints, IBAC may have identified that there were risks involved in referring Emma's matter to Victoria Police. Because a big part of this whole experience of yours and the awful experience that your children have gone through that our original story identified, Michelle, was that amongst many other horrors and putting to one side even the awful abuse itself, was that your escape plan was leaked back to your former partner, putting you and your family at very serious risk. And that's something that needed to be, that process that allowed that even to happen was something that needed to be examined by an independent authority, Michelle.
Yes, it was. And I also, just for the benefit of your listeners too, I complained to IBAC about my escape plan being leaked while I was still trapped with my perpetrator. And in my complaint form, I specifically say that I now feel that I can't leave because my cover's been blown. And as we know, the most dangerous time for any family violence victim is when she leaves or when her perpetrator thinks she was going to leave. So I was at extreme risk. Now, IBAC has still, despite that, and despite the fact that surely knowing, referring my complaint back to Victoria Police was going to increase the risk, has referred the complaint back. And Victoria Police inexplicably has then referred that complaint back to one of the officers who was involved in leaking my escape plan. And when I tell people that, their jaws drop. They can't believe it, but we've got, it's all here in the report and it's all in the FOI information that I have gathered from Vic Police as well. That's what happened. And IBAC, from this report, as you can read, was going to endorse that disclosure of my escape plan as reasonable on member welfare grounds, because everyone was just concerned about my perpetrator, not me, until you aired my story. And then there was a change. And I spoke to IBAC at the time. As you probably remember, they issued a press release just after our interview aired on your program 2 years ago. And then I called them and said, hey, that's me. You've got my complaint and you've been reviewing my file, and I'm supposed to have the outcome on the 23rd of July. It's me. And then it was like, oh, well, you provided new information in your interview. We'll have to consider that. Now, the new information I provided was the most dangerous time for a family violence victim is the leaving period. That's not new information. They've reconsidered it. They've revised it. And then, as we know, the complaint outcome was reversed. And from that, a lot of my advocacy has flowed and everything else, all the other stories. But if you hadn't told my story, I don't think that we would have got the IBAC result that we did. I don't think any of this would have come out. And accountability, police accountability and oversight in this state, unfortunately, is coming down at the moment to the media and to the Supreme Court because IBAC's not resourced or able to properly oversight police.
Michelle, the report also says, the Victorian Inspectorate report says, that the Inspectorate remains of the view that some complaints, due to the nature of the allegations or perhaps the risks associated with ongoing elements of those complaints, simply must be looked at by IBAC itself, which is probably a reasonable observation to make. But as you say, if the authority is not resourced in a way that it can do that thoroughly and in a timely manner, then that's just a wish, a hope that's going to whistle away in the wind.
100%. And also, an anti-corruption body is not really set up for dealing with police misconduct and matters like mine, where there's active risk, where you can't take 2 years to investigate the way they did with mine.
You think there needs to be a specialist unit?
We need a specialist unit. We need a specialist ombudsman. And the other thing too is IBAC has conceded they don't have the family violence skills, and clearly if you don't know enough about family violence to know that leaking an escape plan to a perpetrator is high risk, you're probably not really set up for investigating. And I have some sympathy for them in that they have been given this portfolio of police oversight and they're just set up to fail. Their legislation doesn't support what they really need to be doing, and the human cost is borne by people like me. But they're also not set up to deal with welfare. I've been treated terribly by IBAC the whole way through. It's been incredibly traumatic. When I've drawn the consequences of what happened to me as a result of their referral and said, do you understand the impact of this on me? I've just had absolutely callous and cold responses. There's been no accountability, no apologies, nothing.
Well,
and I understand corporations don't want to apologise, but that's made it worse.
Well, we've put a call into the IBAC Commissioner and we've requested an interview, so we'll see how that goes. But I did want to ask you, Michelle, how is life for you and Liam now that you've managed to escape that family violence that was perpetrated by the serving police officer you were with at the time, and how are things for you?
I think I used the analogy back when you interviewed me, it being like a forest and a bushfire, how, the green shoots start coming back after time, and they are coming back. The kids are recovering. Both of them are finding their own justice in advocating for other children to be recognised as victims in their own right. We have a support group going now for other victims of police officers, and we sort of help guide them through the system. We don't do stuff that other services do, but just letting them know the police perpetrator playbook, how police will abuse things, and if they are not getting dealt with by the new unit or they're not on the radar of the new unit, we're letting the new unit know and sometimes advocating for them. So that's sort of where we're at now. We're feeling a bit safer. I'm a bit nervy today with the press,
sure, yeah.
And with one outlet naming my perpetrator, but we'll take that, and I just hope the system improves. This has taken a huge personal toll on me, on my mental health, and that's reflected in the report too, and on our family. But I really hope that this makes a difference, because we just want the system to change so others don't go through what we went through.
Which is why we did the interview with you in the first place as well, and I'm glad that we did. Michelle,
I'm so grateful to you all and to your listeners for their support, because it's really made a difference, and I think it's what's really ended up in this report.
Yeah, the listeners have been extraordinary in relation to this too. Michelle, all the best to you and the kids, and I hope we don't have to speak again. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you very much. Thanks for doing that.
Michelle, not her real name, and we interviewed Michelle, and you might remember the extraordinary young Liam who was talking about what that was like, witnessing the violence that serving police officer meted out to him, his baby sister and his mum at that time. And great to hear that they're finding safety and, as she says, the green shoots. This text has come in. Virginia, I completed a PhD in police accountability and worked in the Office of Police Integrity. When it transitioned into IBAC, they placed me in the local council's corruption prevention team. I left. I fully support a new police ombudsman staffed with passionate and suitably qualified people. And it's signed Anonymous. Hopefully we can speak to the IBAC Commissioner about the failings in the system and what can be done better. But up next, your calls.